Boom. Hello, everyone. This is Martin Comtois, MC Starman, and we're here to do another video. Hello, Alan. How you doing?
I'm good, yeah, just surviving.
Surviving,
But
thriving,
good to
and
be here.
surviving.
It's definitely helping talking to you through these times.
Well, thank you for that. And it helps. We're trying something different here. We're instead of being in each other's presence, we're doing a recording on Zoom, and so we're going to see how that works. And I hope that it's a pleasant experience for our for the people watching us. So we're going to be speaking about the equinox, the fall equinox, which is in 40 minutes our time, 12:21 here on the West Coast. And so we're entering into fall, and the ancients and a lot of early modern astrologers, in their predictions, they did charts of the equinox as a prediction, as a tool for prediction of what the season ahead was going to be like. So we're going to treat the chart like that. So this reading here that we're going to do is going to be valid for the next 3 months. And if you want a more personal reading, then reach out to us and we'll do a transit reading for you. And that's what we do. That's how we pay for our. That's how we earn our living, is by doing readings, and we do these videos and these posts to help those who we support through their astrological work, to our astrological work. So please, and I'm getting a little smudge going, an equinox, a fall equinox smudge there. How are you feeling the equinox, Alan?
Yeah, well, I think I'm still reeling from the moon there the other day, the full moon. It seems to be, I think it's similar to, the last week. Not much has changed with, the sort of metronome swinging back and forth. But it seems to be swinging faster. I think that it's the sort of mood swings are up and down even faster. Seems to be great 1 minute and then despair the next. Um, yeah, it's interesting times, turbulent, lots of tension, and then no tension. Seems to be fast moving.
Yeah, no, I feel that too. Personally, I had a bit of a election depression that followed the election, and I find it quite sad that our political system, it doesn't really reflect who we are as individuals, especially when we're astrologers and we're alternative folks, and so it doesn't seem like in our collective there's much room for alternative views and viewpoints, and the narrative is quite depressing, and so I kind of had a post-election blues.
I think politics in general will get you depressed.
Yes, for sure, because we don't feel like we have a voice in it, huh?
No, exactly. Yeah, it feels like it just feels like it's completely separate to. It doesn't really make any difference what to your life really, but you can't have a say in it, but it does make a difference to what happens to you. So
Yeah,
no
that's kind of why
control.
I don't. That's kind of why I don't, as much as possible in my posts and in my videos, don't discuss politics. So let's get back to astrology, because at least we have
Exactly.
some power in that. So
Yeah.
you told me that I should mention this quote I was reading. I do a lot of studies of Carl Jung's work, and I'm reading volume 11 of the collected works, which is Psychology and Religion, which is a psychological perspective to Eastern and Western spirituality. And there's a quote that I just love. It's called, it is just a quick one-liner. God is present in the human act of reflection. God
Self-reflection.
is present in the human act of reflection. And so in that sense, when we seek to reflect on astrology and our place in the world, then God is present in that. And so that's a beauty, and I'm going to keep that quote. So I'm going to share the chart here, and we'll just tear it apart here and see what it has to say to us.
Fun.
And yeah, for those who like our work, please do subscribe to the channel and comment and ask questions, and we'll treat the questions in our next videos. We're trying to show up a little more here. And here we are, we got the chart up. Okay. And we're going to make it, well, it's
There
pretty
it is.
nice and big. And so,
Good.
and then we're going to get a pen, and we're going to start with the Sun-Mars conjunction. Boom, I like that. How it makes the circle.
Yeah, it's
So
your circle would not be a circle if it wasn't for that.
no, no, it wouldn't. So the sun is entering Libra at 12:21 this afternoon on the West Coast. I like the numerology of it, 1221 in 2021. And so here we are. This is a very important time in the year. From now, we reached a point of equal days and nights. Equinox. Nox is night, equi is equal, so equinox. So it's known as the ingress of the sun into Aries, and it marks the entrance of into the darkest side of the year. So from Libra to Aries, we have the darkest side of the year in our northern hemisphere. And so in astrology, now the moon becomes more powerful, and the moon becomes more visible, and the sun fades away. And so it's very symbolic, and it represents, us connecting more with the lunar principles. Now, the sun is moving towards a conjunction with Mars at the next new moon. Sun, Mars, and then Mercury is going to be turning retrograde in the moon. So on October 6th, we're going to have a new moon of Mercury with the sun, the moon, Mars, and Mercury. And so that's going to be really kind of the beginning of our fall season. And that Sun-Mars conjunction is really important. So Mars is the need to individuate. The sun is what is my light, what I'm here to share in the world. So the Sun-Mars conjunction comes every 2 years, and it's a very important cycle that begins again of how do I manifest my light and my will into the world. Now that Sun-Mars conjunctions makes a series of angles. It makes an angle to Neptune over here. So you see that red line here. So the sun has been in opposition to Neptune. And I think that's that emotional kind of, tension we've been feeling, kind of not knowing, kind of the fog, Sun Neptune opposition is really foggy. Neptune and Pisces, we talked about that in our last video of the opposition with Neptune and the sun. So that same kind of fog exists. And then Mars makes an angle to Chiron, so the call to shamanic work and healing. And so we're going to really feel that in the next new moon, when all the 4 of those planets are in opposition to Chiron. So we'll talk about that. And then also the Sun-Mars conjunctions make angle to Pluto and Saturn. And so that's Saturn is the grim reaper, Pluto is the lord of hell. Saturn Pluto conjunction, we experienced that not last winter, the winter before that, when the crisis began. And so that Saturn, Pluto, the Sun, Mars, it's very much present. What are we dealing with in these times, and how this crisis continues? And so that's all very much, and then in confrontation to the Mars Sun, then it's quite we're kicking back against that. How does that feel to you,
Yeah,
Alan?
definitely. Yeah, it's pretty heavy. Hey, like the Pluto is this like chronic repetitive pattern of sort of death, rebirth, and sort of this suffering, this like you being in this cycle of suffering. Um, and so yeah, that's definitely been active this year. I was looking at stuff this morning, and I noticed that back in 2001, in September 11th, 2001, Pluto and Saturn were opposite at that moment too. So it's just crazy energies, lots of and this cycle of repetition of this suffering is
Yes,
is
yes.
there. Yeah.
And at that time, Jupiter and Saturn were also in conjunction. So 2001
Right.
had a lot of similarity with 2020 and 2021.
Yeah.
Because we had the Jupiter Saturn conjunction in conjunction to Pluto, and in 2001 we had them in opposition. And
Yeah.
so I think that it's important, when we face a crisis, to realize that really it's all part of a much larger picture, and that these cycles continue to repeat itself. And so there's a
Hmm.
narrative that's ongoing. And so, yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think. Yeah. That I think I said last week with that Mars Sun, just that desire to want to sort of show up and like have that warrior energy. Like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to do it. And then opposing Neptune is like, but how do I do it?
Mm-hmm.
How can
And
I show up when all I want to do is kind of like bury myself under the duvet or whatever.
and then Saturn and Pluto says, do it. And then, like it's really important to the world. And so,
Yeah,
so
but
then
it's gonna hurt.
we're feeling called, but also we kind of, part of us is refusing the call. And that's what I find in my own process. I kind
Yeah,
of go and get lost in the fog, and then I kind of snap out of it and say, okay, I got to get to work. This is really important.
yeah,
And it's been going on for a while, this struggle. And
yeah,
so,
and it's hard work, right? It's not easy to deal with Pluto Saturn. That's like heavy stuff. So it's you want to move forward, you don't want to move forward, but it's hard, and you kind of have to. Um, so yeah, that's totally feeling that that
cool. So we're not done
configuration.
talking. We're not done talking about Pluto, but we're going to shift our focus from the sun to the moon. So the moon at the equinox is in a conjunction with Chiron, the wounded healer, in Aries. And the moon makes a T square to Mercury in Libra. This Mercury in Libra is just about to turn retrograde, turns retrograde on the 27th. And so Mercury will spend quite a bit of time here in Libra. And again, at the new moon, there'll be that four-way conjunction in opposite to Chiron. So this is kind of the motif that we'll see at the beginning of fall here. And so that moon Mercury is the guide of souls. If you look at the archetype of Mercury, or the glyph, the symbol of Mercury, you have the cross of matter, you have the sun, and the little hat is the moon. So Mercury is the priest that orchestrates the union between the sun and the moon by hook or by crook. So Mercury is known as the trickster. And we're going to talk a lot more. We're going to do a video on Mercury retrograde here coming up, and explore that cycle. But here we are, Mercury in opposition to the sun and forming what we call a T square. So it's that red triangle there with Pluto. so that the guide of souls and the moon in Aries is the feminine part of our nature, in Aries the warrior, and Libra the peacemaker, Mercury, then Pluto Capricorn, the crumbling of the establishment and the death and rebirth process our society is going through. And so, the lunar aspect of us is, the feminine aspect is kind of, we're seeing that there's some deep change going on. And what's interesting about that moon constellation, and the way we look at astrology in this healer and a dreamer technique, is that we look at the constellations of the planets as psychological complexes. And what's really beautiful about the moon, Chiron, Mercury, Pluto, T square, is that it is also supported by Neptune and by Jupiter and by Pluto, and all of these planets go back to Mercury. So we have the Jupiter trine here, and then we have the quinsunk of Mercury to Neptune, and we have the opposition to the sun, and then each of those planets all interrelate with each other. Same thing with Pluto Neptune and Pluto Jupiter. So you have this like little diamond shape there, and that so says a lot. So if we were going to summarize it, we would have the moon in conjunction with Chiron being called to healing work. Mercury in Gemini, we communicate the, the tone has changed, Mercury and Mars and Venus, now they're in Libra, so Libra is like more harmonious. You can feel, we're less angry at each other, communication that are harmonious are more important. But we're still facing a tremendous rebirth, Pluto, but we're feeling a little more optimistic about it. And this is a quest for redemption of our society and ourselves. And so that says a lot about our fall. How do you,
Mm-hmm.
we can have a little discussion. How do you feel about that, Alan?
Yeah, no, that's yeah, I was looking at this earlier and sort of coming up with some thoughts on it, and I'm thinking that moon, I didn't quite pick up on the Chiron there before, but now I see that Chiron plays into it. So with Chiron and the moon, I see the moon there as your emotional body, right? Like
Mhm.
how much of yourself do you show? Like how, like it's like a vulnerability, right? Like how much do you retreat and guard off, and how much do you show yourself, right? So how open are you willing to be, right? And how much should you and should you not? Like if you show too much, you're very vulnerable. If you close off too much, it's again you're sort of vulnerable in a different way, right? Like overprotected. But so with that moon and the Chiron there, there's definitely some healing to be found in that aspect of how much do I show myself. But being an Aries, it seems to want to just like go regardless, right? So it's like the emotions are going to just be there, they're going to come up. And opposing Mercury, um, and then squaring Pluto, it seems that there's something to be learned there in like communicating your emotions and trying not to be too forceful with them, and not to hold them back, and then using those, like it's sort of like emotional intelligence, right, with the Mercury
Mhm.
there, um, and like you say with that trickster, like trying to sort of process your thoughts and emotions, and then being square that Pluto, there's obviously um, a lot of what's the word? Yeah, there's a lot of recycling of things, right? So, are we going to birth a new way of interacting with our emotions and with others on that sort of mental, communicative? It's like building new relations through our emotions, kind of thing.
That's really cool. Actually, I've been experiencing that in a lot of the readings that I'm doing. How do we express ourselves? So that's really good. And
Hmm.
as you were speaking there, I realized also that Chiron, well, we talked about that. Chiron is also making angle to the sun and to the
Hmm.
moon as well. And then we're going to have this new moon that's going to be in direct opposition to Chiron. So, this wounded healer archetype is playing a really important role. So what is the wounded healer? The wounded healer seeks to heal one's own wound, and that is what the healing path is about. We want to become shamans, we want to become healers, but we first have to heal ourselves. And I think that that's really, really, really important. Instead of pointing the finger at others and saying you're wounded, to realize that I have some wounds that need to be taken care of. And
Hmm.
so the emphasis on being healthy and of healing ourselves, and I think that that really is one of the great shifts that we're seeing, is that people are starting to see that really you can't point at others and accuse them of doing the exact same thing that you're doing.
Hmm.
That's never going to be fruitful.
Hmm.
That was beautiful. And then I wanted to talk about one last thing, which I think is really, really important. So one, we have that solar relationship that we studied, and we studied the moon constellation, and then we have a very important and challenging Moon Uranus conjunct opposition, and that Moon Uranus opposition makes a T square again. So that T square here actually makes two T square. It makes a T square to Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. So Venus goes to Saturn, Venus goes to Jupiter. Of course, it also goes to Neptune and to Chiron, but then it goes to Uranus. So Venus plays a very important role in the next few months, in the season coming up, and Mars and Venus are in mutual reception. So that really helps. Venus in the sign of Mars, Mars in the sign of
Hmm.
Venus, so they're united together. And that, so then we have the will and we have the need for love. And, Venus in the sign of death and rebirth is not usually that happy there. It's a very deeply emotional, sad Venus in the sign of birth and transformation. It's also very powerfully sexual, but also kind of dark and mood. And in opposition to Uranus, Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. Taurus is ruled by Venus, so then that Venus, Uranus, that need for revolution and evolution and change is very Venusian, and the sadness of soul and the need for evolution, that's really sets a very important tone for the season ahead. And lots of people have been having issues in relationships, and Uranus and Taurus feels like the ground is shaking, and both of them form two beautiful T squares to Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. And Jupiter and Saturn and Aquarius, there's an idealism there that we want to create a new society that is more embracing to the divine feminine, and so both of that moon and that Venus play really important roles, like you said, the emotions. And so that's really important. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's about what I'm feeling. And before you take the chart down there, um, I think you described that pretty well. Covered. I think you covered it there. I just wanted to sort of clarify something. We talked about this before we started with the orbs, um, and some people might be wondering how is Saturn and Jupiter square when they're both of those planets when they're so far apart down there? And so, you know, the thinner the line that you see joining them, it's like they're further. There's a further orb. So there's a certain number of degrees that you can set the different programs to, right? So for some people, they may not see that that is square if they're looking at their own charts. That's what happened to me this morning. So mine was a lot less busy than this. But you can set those orbs to be wider so that, you know, even though the planets are further apart, they're still kind of classed as an aspect, and we can still feel that. But that can, I just wanted to clarify that because they seem so far apart on the chart there. But you know,
Yes, yes.
the weaker the aspect is, the thicker the line, the more close to exact they are, and then the thinner the line, they're a bit further apart.
That's
Um,
beautiful. Thanks for pointing that out, Alan.
yeah.
And before I switch off the chart, I wanted to point one more thing, which is really, I think that, you know, we've been talking about this, and then we have a video. I did a video. The last video I did before I took the break there, before we took the break, was on the Saturn-Uranus square. So here's Uranus and here's Saturn, and that's engaged with Venus. Now, this Saturn-Uranus square, and again, also, you know, leading to the crisis that we, you know, going through, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto in 2020, all, you know, we had 3 conjunctions of Jupiter and Pluto, and we had 1 conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. Then at the beginning of this year, we had a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. So these 3 planets here really are kind of responsible or have a lot to say about the crisis that we're in. And then now both of those are in angle to Uranus. And so, but we're living through in 2021 and 2022, we're going to live through 4 squares of Uranus Saturn, and in December we're experiencing our 3rd one.
Hmm.
And so then I'm gonna, at the end of the video, I'm going to make do a link to the Saturn Uranus video, and then we'll do a follow up as we get close. This is going to be in December again. That's going to finish fall. And that Saturn Uranus tension, it's been very difficult to integrate. And, you know, so because they're conflicting archetypes, you know, Saturn overthrows Uranus as the god of heavens, you know, before the turn of the first millennium there. In Greek mythology, Saturn is known to castrate Uranus. And so you think about that, you know, Saturn is the old king, you know, or the king wanting to control, you know, this old system, you know, Saturn, Pluto, the death of the old system, Jupiter, Saturn, the rebirth of the king. Really quite powerful, you know, planetary alignment. And then it squares Uranus. So Uranus, the light bringer, the revolutionary. So Saturn, you know, so then how do we reconcile those 2 archetypes? And I think that, you know, in the first 2 squares to Saturn and Uranus, we kind of all like kind of, it really hit us hard. You know, we thought the crisis was over, and now we realize that the old, you know, the old model still has a lot of pull, and the revolutionary is not being heard. You know, Uranus, the
Hmm.
light bringer, you know, the collective evolution, it just seems to be really stuck by this control issue,
Yeah.
you know, in a lot of sense, you know, 2020 and 2021 was a lot about empowering the control freaks, you know, the people who want to control everybody. And so that
Hmm.
Saturnian, you know, but now what's happening is we're learning to synthesize those 2 archetypes. Synthesizing means really that here I have discipline and mastery, Saturn, and Uranus, the need to evolve and to bring light into the world. And so then we find that all of the tension that's forced us to put discipline and this call to bringing evolution to the world has forced us to really get much stronger about our determination. And so in that sense, I think that there's a blessing in that Saturn Uranus square. And I think that in the third square, we're going to see more of that. And as 2022 unfolds, it's going to be even more like that.
Hmm.
Mm,
Yeah, that's great. That's that Uranus there. Um, it's like you're saying, Saturn castrated Uranus, right, for stealing the sun from the gods to bring to humans.
right.
Um, so Uranus is this revolution, right? I want to revolt with the and these are all apart from Jupiter. Am I correct in saying that everything's a transpersonal planet? So it involves
Jup-
the world.
Jupiter and Saturn are personal planets.
Okay, yeah,
Uranus, Chiron, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are transpersonal. They're
right,
trans-Saturnian.
right,
Saturn is the limit of the ego. So Saturn is very personal. It's how I keep myself together, you know.
right.
But in a collective way, it's kind of, you know, it's the grim reaper and the timekeeper, you know. So it's very conservative, you know. It keeps me
Yeah.
together, you know. And so you can see
Hmm.
you don't want to let go, you know. And Uranus
Right. So
says
it's
let go,
yeah.
it's going to be better, and Saturn says no, I don't want to let go. And then Uranus says, yeah man, it's going
Yeah.
to be really good for you. No. And so that tension,
Right.
you know, it feels like at the beginning it felt like a castration, but now they're starting to work together better, I think. Did you feel that in
Yeah.
the
It's
process?
interesting. It's interesting because at the end of just before 2019 finished, there was so many protests all over the world for different reasons, right? Hong Kong protests, everything was going crazy in all the different countries. Just coming up to the end of 2019, so there's your Uranus sort of manifestation happening. But then with the Saturn controlling of that, they got it. It just got castrated with what went on through 2020 and 2021. It's like no, put a stop to that. Everything, the control is back on top, and then and now we're kind of, yeah, it's like, hang on, we want to, it's still in play, right? This Uranus Saturn is still in play. There's a battle going on there.
Cool. So now if we're gonna synthesize this whole chart reading that we did, you
Whew.
know, so then what
It's
does
easier
that,
said than done, eh?
well, we've done a really good job of pointing out those, you know, the three major, you know, we had the solar and the lunar, and then we had the Venusian, you know, kind of constellations there. And so if we were summarizing, we would say that the courageous sun, you know, Mars, you know, affirming myself in the light of the darkness of our times, and the moon Chiron, the need to heal the sacred feminine, and the Venusian Saturn Uranus Jupiter there, there's a real, you know, sense that, you know, the higher aspects of the Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus is starting to be integrated, and that we're starting to show up on a different, you know, in a different um, octave of expression. It's
Mhm.
encouraging us, you know, and so there, it's really, you know, beneficial. And I wanted to talk about what happens in whenever there's a confrontation of opposites. Whenever there's the tension between the confrontation of opposites, as we've seen, you know, in the last few years, you know, there's a tremendous tension in our world. And so tensions like that are tremendously creative, but they also become resolved in the uniting third. And the uniting third is an alchemical perspective. It is Mercurius, Mercury, the uniting third that unites the sun and the moon together. And so I fully see that in this next season ahead, we're going to have the manifestation of the uniting third, that we're going to be able to synthesize everything and come together. Now, it won't really be like a kind of a magical, you know, rise of the new age or anything like that. I think that it will take a long time to integrate, but I think we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then the last square of Saturn Uranus doesn't come till fall of 2022, where Saturn and Uranus will be within the same degree, within 1 degree of square for a whole 2 months period. So I don't think that we're out of the woods yet, but I think that this fall here we're going to see, and it may manifest positively or negatively. One thing for sure is that I think we're starting to become stronger as individual, as indicated by that Mars Sun
Mm-hmm.
conjunction, and so I'm feeling more optimistic, but I think that these are still really difficult times ahead. How do you
Mm-hmm.
feel about that?
Yeah, no, I think that summarizes it pretty well. Something that was coming up for me was just how the individual has power in the whole system. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like there is power in the individual, um, if they come together, right? Kind of seeing that in that chart right now, and if that's the flavor of the next few months, I think that's what we're going to see a little bit more of a voice, perhaps.
Yes, that's I think we're all hoping for. It's cool how we're just
And look at the
finishing,
time.
and it's 12:21, so we're gonna do a little prayer together and a little smudge
That
here
is
on Rising
unbelievable
Sun.
timing.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty good, huh? So we're wishing you all a very beautiful and fruitful and inspirational fall, and look after each other, look at your community, develop sustainability, be the change that you want to see. We are in this together. Alan, it's a great honor and privilege to work with you like this, and I think we did pretty good today.
I'm happy that my computer made it through without glitching. At least that's my experience.
And on my side too, it looks like it went super smooth. So I'm thrilled, and then we'll please comment on or ask questions or give us some feedback and pass this around to others. And we'll see
Mhm.
you very shortly.
Happy solstice. I mean, equinox.
Equinox, equinox. Yes, fall equinox blessings and gratitude. This is MC Starman, Martin Comtois, and Alan Churchill. We're out of here. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
See ya.
You see.